start out today's talk by throwing out a number. $20 billion. Now, what could that number be? $20 billion could be the gross domestic product, or total value of goods and services produced, of a country like Uganda in East Africa in 2012. And I know Uganda well. It's a strong country with very high growth. Population, 35 million people. $20 billion could also be close to the GDP of a country like Estonia, member of the European Union, with the euro as its currency. The International Monetary Fund recently spoke about Estonia and said that it was an advanced economy. And I've never been there, but I'm sure that it is. Population, 1.5 million people. $20 billion is also the total amount of fines paid to financial regulators in 2012 by major world financial institutions guilty of manipulating interest rates, mis-selling financial products, and abusing clients' trust. $20 billion. Now, isn't that completely disproportionate? A few banks paying in fines, the equivalent of what 35 million Ugandans generate in real value in a year. How's that equitable? How's that right? So I initially was tempted during this talk to speak about how $20 billion just became a number, which business anchors such as CNN's Richard Quest and CNBC's Maria Bartiromo can feast over while roasting executives on their shows. I was also tempted to focus on how very broken our current version of capitalism is, how focused on the very few it is, and how it deepens the divide between the haves and the have-nots. I was also tempted to bring up the vividly poetic imagery penned by the masterful Matt Taibbi in Rolling Stone magazine, where he spoke of certain banks as giant vampire squids wrapped around the face of humanity. But that would have been easy, and quite frankly, not that appropriate and even not that fair. Because it's not really about the banks, is it? Nor is it about the large corporations guilty of accounting fraud and selling faulty and dangerous products. It's about people. It's about us. It's about a general mindset and a pattern of bad corporate behavior which has unfortunately spread like wildfire in recent decades. And the question is, where has this mindset and general pattern of bad corporate behavior come from? See, I feel that over the past decades, we've all been dragged into what I like to call the rat race to nowhere. We're all in a mad rush, in a rush to get our kids into the right schools, rush to get our careers right, rush to work out and power hard, and rush to get even more connected in an already uber-connected society. And when did we lose the ability to just stop? To just stop and think where this race was taking us, and for what? And what compromises were we making along the way just to get there? Several months ago in Spain, there was a cross-country running race, and as they got towards the end of the race, there was a Spaniard called Ivan Anaya and a Kenyan called Abel Mutai, and they were running neck and neck until with about 300 or 400 meters to go, the Kenyan pulled away. And he pulled away rather convincingly. As he got to the finish line, he slowed and raised his hands, thinking that he had passed the line. The line was actually probably 15 meters further down. And the Spaniard came from behind, and instead of passing him, stopped. He stopped, and he pointed out the Kenyan's mistake to him and said, you know, the line is over there. And he let him pass it first. Isn't that a stunningly refreshing story of honesty, integrity, and dignity? But what's even more stunning is that this story should be an exception as opposed to the norm. Because isn't this the kind of behavior that we should expect from ourselves and from our children? And you, would you be prouder of a win such as Ivan Anaya's, or of a win secured regardless of the circumstances? And translated into a business or corporate context, the question becomes, is it just about profit? Or is it about profit and purpose? Is it just about the end? Or is it about the means and the end? Because when we look back at the finishing lines of our own race, it will be the way in which we got there that matters most. So, how should we live this race? For me, it all starts with education. Aristotle said 2,300 years ago that educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And you see, I think it's right. It is that simple. It's not about some complicated and complex, drawn-out process which we all have to adapt, adopt, or adhere to. It's about remembering basic values, nurturing them, growing them, and even most importantly, living by them. Honesty, integrity, dignity, empathy, and compassion make for a better world. All values driven by the heart. All values we can live by, and in my opinion, also profit by. The recent economic downturn has perhaps served us well. We've been jolted into reassessing the paths we were taking. We are undeniably more aware of events happening in other places and the impact these events have on our lives. Just as we realize that our choices and actions will influence people thousands of miles away. The interactivity and the interconnectivity of us all is thrilling. And this is not only a huge leap forward in human development, it's also a huge lever for introducing more heart into education. And doing as Aristotle said, educate the heart. Because with that increased interconnectivity comes increased responsibility. We can no longer turn a blind eye to events which happen beyond our own backyards. The decisions that we make will impact society and the environment at home and beyond. Up until recently, I hadn't heard of someone called Billy Ray Harris, but his story is a fascinating one. I think it was about a month ago, there was a very kind-hearted lady who developed a rash on her ring finger, and so she took off a very cherished diamond ring and put it in her change wallet and went about her day, and on her way home in St. Louis, Missouri, she came across a homeless man under a bridge, Mr. Harris, and she emptied the contents of her change wallet into his cup. And she went home, and only when she got home did she realize with shock what she had done. And so with her husband, they went back and they looked for Mr. Harris, and he wasn't there anymore. So, quite upset, she goes back home, and the next morning, first thing, they rush back to the same spot, and they find Mr. Harris sitting there, and she goes to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, I don't know if you remember," and he interrupts her, and he says, "I know who you are. You're the lady with the diamond ring, and I've kept it right here waiting to give it back to you." And they were so shocked by this unexpected gesture that they went home and they raised an online fundraiser for him. And the last time I checked, they had raised over $150,000 and people contributing from places as far away as Singapore and Cyprus because they felt a connection to this story. Because we are all interconnected. And a couple of journalists came and interviewed Mr. Harris, and they asked him, what do you think about everything that's happening? And he said, well, I'm very happy. But I ask myself the question, and I wonder, what has the world come to when I give back something which is rightfully someone else's property, and all of this happens? So there is much hope and renewed optimism. Whereas most managers today struggle to adapt, many Generation Xers, most millennials, and hopefully all Gen Zers, and yes, Gen Z exists, it's on Wikipedia, and if you were born post-2000, that's what you are, can carry with them this new paradigm to the workplace from day one. If we remember basic values and do, again, as Aristotle said, educate the heart. So how do we bring this change about? First, we need to move from a state of mind in which says we can't do anything to a state of mind in which change is possible. Moving from apathy to empathy, from detachment to drive, from complacency to curiosity, and from passiveness to passion. We need to question the status quo constantly, not getting sucked into the rituals of our daily lives. How? By reassessing our personal goals and motivations. Moving beyond performance management, think life management. We need to be kind and perform unexpected acts of kindness often, as much as possible. We all know we have to be kind to other people. Why not practice that same mindfulness also in business, or for the benefit of society at large, or for the environment? Make your business decisions ethically. Weigh the potential impact on society and the environment on your decision-making process. In my line of business, impact investing, we actually find financial reward in doing so. There you have it. Purpose and profit. We need to smile often to ourselves and to others. And something else, we need to read, and we need to read more, and we need to read different things. And if you have children, read with them. Be curious, let your mind wander, and make new connections. Your best ideas will come from connecting the dots. And most importantly, we need to take a step back and look with perspective at how fortunate our lives are compared to those of others. So let me wrap up by bringing up another number here, 80. Now, what could that number be? It could be the amount of time in minutes it took for me to get here this morning. It actually is the average life expectancy in the European Union. In Switzerland, it's 1 year more, it's 81. And top of the charts is Monaco at 89. So it's a good thing that a lot of wealthy people live there, because that's 9 more years of Monaco rent to pay, and it ain't cheap. But let's go back to that number 80. So you have 80 years to live, and we don't know what happens next. Let's not even get into that. What are you going to do with that time? How are you going to view the world and address its most pressing problems? What imprint do you want to leave behind for yourself, your children, your grandchildren, and beyond? Is it really about us Or is it about them? What is our moral responsibility, really? Because although we may all think that the status quo is too well entrenched to change, that the dysfunctions are too large to remedy, and that the inequities are too wide to bridge, everyone listening to this can make a difference through small actions or through large. Because, at the end of the day, it's really only about people. Thank you.